All right, Gabe. You get one question. Go ahead. Ask it. It can be any question in the world. It can be about the weather. It can be about my favorite sports team. It could be about all the...
Do you like sports? No, I'm not going to waste my pre-show quid pro quo.
Okay.
I will not do it on that. It's a little bit of a doozy.
Okay.
If you were involved in a heist, let's center it, maybe a bank heist.
Got it.
One of 4 to 5 roles.
Uh-huh.
Role number 1, the mastermind. Role number 2, the hench, the body.
The body.
The handy, the guy who's going to do all the
Right.
the
Am I the guy with the
justifier.
gun that like tells the teller to
Yeah,
get on
of course.
the floor?
The body, yeah.
Yeah.
The number 3, the driver. Number 4, the bagman, the one who collects all of the money. And of course, number 5, you always need a guy on tech.
I know it doesn't sound very glamorous, but I would like to be the bad guy.
Do you know what?
I don't think I could be the mastermind, as I have a proclivity for this kind of thing. I think what I'm really good at is being sneaky, and kind of I can in certain times kind of like blend into the background. I'm really good at that.
Elusive.
That kind of thing. I'm elusive. I'm very elusive. In fact, the job that I have, the people that listen to the podcast don't. There have been times where we're always surrounded by hundreds of people,
Correct.
especially, and I will approach somebody and they will turn around and they're scared. Like, oh my
Gotta
God.
keep a bell on you.
Exactly. I'm really good at sneaking up on people. I don't know if I give off some weird aura. I think I would make a great bet. If you need something transported from point A to point B and not have this person seen, I'm your guy. I'm the guy who can do that. Like, and it doesn't matter what I'm carrying. I can slip in and I can slip out. It's like nobody even knew I was there.
You're innocuous. Nobody knows.
Yeah, exactly.
Introduced as deja vu and dismissed just as quickly.
Right. The bad guy is also the guy who can double cross at the very last moment. Of
course.
So I think that the bad guy, as most people think of him, is kind of like he's just the lowest of the low. The bad guy can be the bad guy.
It is also the most important role in the heist.
Exactly.
You are the person who controls how much we're taking in.
Right.
If you get too greedy, you're risking the whole mission.
I don't know if we can get into the prisoner dilemma right now. You know about that?
Well, people put that on the board for the next podcast.
Right. There we go. Exactly. But no, I think I'd be a pretty good bad guy.
And somehow you've answered it correctly.
There we go. Perfect. Hey everybody, welcome to What Magic Is This? A podcast that winks surreptitiously at fellow listeners. A podcast about magic, the occult, the esoteric, the supernatural, the paranormal, and the weird. My name is Douglas Batchelor. Today I am joined by my very esteemed guest, Gabriel.
Esteemed. You are too kind.
Gabriel is, he's a podcaster himself. We'll give some links at the very end of the show, but he is very familiar with the podcasting process, so it's good to have another pro in the room.
Oh, amateur at best.
If you haven't listened to the podcast before, I give my guests about 25 topics. They're usually revolving around magic, the occult, and societies or even individuals, and they get to choose which topic they talk about. I only have a choice in the 25 topics that I give to my guests. The guest gets to choose. And Gabe has picked a doozy of a topic today. He has chosen secret societies. So, this was an extremely maddening episode for me to research because for this kind of thing, there is just far too much to talk about. From this podcast alone, there's at least going to be 5 other topics to follow from this one. It's just too big. First of all, I want to say that the occult and secret societies, they kind of go hand in hand. If you were to go to a bookstore or a place that you can purchase occult literature, they are absolutely choked with books about Nazis and the occult, on Freemasons, on the Priory of Sion, and on and on.
Skull and crossbones.
They're just, it's such a huge topic. We're going to stay somewhat broad here. We're going to go in some kind of strange directions, maybe give you some examples and whatnot. It's going to be fantastic. Are you comfy?
I am so excited.
You got your wine here.
I'm set.
You got your wine. Strangely enough, I picked this wine because its grapes are harvested at night.
Oh.
If you look on the bottle, it says harvested at night. So I don't know.
After midnight is correct.
That's right. So we'll see if that makes any kind of a difference. All right, let's jump in. So what is a secret society? A secret society is a group of individuals, usually men, that have meetings, idiosyncratic rituals. Sometimes they're esoteric. Usually they operate within a hierarchical structure.
Right.
There's degrees. You can rise on the degrees. If you do something bad, maybe you get pushed down a little bit. But what you need to understand for these groups is that secrecy is their order. They know things that you don't know, not unless you're a member of the secret society. So that's it. I would say that the impulse to form a secret society is a somewhat human impulse. Think, if you will, a Gary Larson cartoon.
Oh, of course.
The Far Side, and you've got the cavemen, and Thag is talking to Rog about how Tar gets more food than everybody else, but they don't think he does very much of the hunting. Yeah. So Tag and
he's a lazy bum.
Tag and Thar, they start talking, and they say, maybe we involve some other one. We're going to get Dirk. And the three of them, when they're next out hunting, something happens.
Conspire, maybe.
Something happens to this freeloader, and he's suddenly not seen anymore. And the three of cavemen, they think, that worked good first time. Maybe we stick together and stay like this. So again, this is an extremely silly example, but I think this kind of thing is far more inanely human than we'd like to think. So,
may I wager that any society is rather secretive? I mean, these are at a different level that we will get into, but right. I feel like any society at a certain level, if Gronk and Prague and Thonk decide Dirk, I apologize.
Yes, okay.
How dare I, Dirk?
How dare you?
But once they start conspiring, I think any little club is. If you think about of our childhood, when you get together with a couple of buddies, we're like, we're going to do a membership, we're going to be a little club, and you're excluding somebody, and that's kind of the point.
Yeah, well, we are social creatures. We got to where we are now by interacting with each other. Mm-hmm. I think you are correct, and there's some way exclusive segments of society has been kind of part of our survival up until this point. Secrecy is also the weakness of a secret society, unfortunately. It's the thing that gives it its power. It's also the thing that takes it away. There's the old adage that 3 people can keep a secret if 2 of them are dead. That's
one of my favorites.
Yeah, so we'll get into a really great example of this later on. Sometimes the secrecy, people, they like to talk. They like, it's very tough to keep things secret, especially with the more people that you involve in this secret. What is the role of secret societies in history? I'm going to say this. If we talk about the history of secret societies in some way, the C word, we're basically talking about history, period. With every aspect of history, at least in the last 500 years, you are never more than 5 steps removed from a secret society or the C word, either forwards or backwards in time. Also, I just want to point out that I'm probably going to get my hand slapped at several points in this episode. People really take this seriously. So I'll apologize right now. Sorry I got that thing that you thought that I got wrong. I'm sorry. So, the toolkit a secret society provides as an agent of historic change was very effective. It hit overdrive during the French Revolution, but before that, the Committee of Correspondence and the Sons of Liberty, they basically launched the American Revolutionary War.
Right.
And secret societies become political parties or political organizations. A good example of this is Nazi Germany and the communists in Russia, unfortunately.
Well, would we wager maybe the core of these parties and whatnot? I mean, they grow out to things but really the essence of them are from the secret society.
And there's been a lot written about the Nazis and the communists as well. The words conspiracy, which is the C word, and secret society.
That's the C word we're talking about.
Yeah.
Jeez. Throw out my short notes.
They kind of fall away after time because, history, written by the winners, et cetera, kind of thing. And make no mistake, secret societies have their digits in all kinds of historical pies. And they have for a very, very long period of time. Conspiring with others seems to be our default setting. It's our standard operating procedure. It's just seemingly something that we do, as I've mentioned. Why secret societies? Well, the modern concept of what we would classify as a secret society is actually fairly new. So it emerged out of Central Europe a few centuries ago. They sanctioned the powerful and usually the rich to operate away from the gaze of the church and whatever monarch they found themselves under. And again, they were usually men. They found that the more extravagant and grandiose a history, the mythology, its initiatory rituals, its rites, and so on, the more attractive it would be to people. And of course, these were mostly a cover. But at a time when revealing secrets or the names of other members could doom their lives and your cause, such pageantry seems needed. Like, you reveal the secrets under pain of death. Like,
we got to excommunicate you.
That's, well, not just excommunicated. We will ruin you.
Of course.
Right?
Scientology.
Because you could ruin us.
I apologize to Scientologists.
Well, yeah. How dare you?
Another episode for another time.
How dare you? Oh, my God.
But I mean, if it's at the risk of people's lives and really the integrity of the society in of itself, it's kind of needed you got to rub somebody out. I mean, the lead ends at that person who spoke.
The idea of the history, I mean, I'll get into a little bit with the Freemasons. They say that this order has been around for thousands of years. It's descended from the Knights Templar or all this kind of stuff. And it's mostly just mythology. And again, it's mostly just a cover. Sure, some of them really were about spiritual enlightenment. There's no doubt about that. Even the idea of bettering yourself as a human being to be a more active member of your society. But it seems that most of the time that this was not their modus operandi for forming these groups. Initiation is very important, without a doubt. It fulfills a certain human need for responsibility and recognition and community. I'm not going to talk about this too much, the initiation. There's a really great book called Secret Ritual and Manhood in Victorian America by Mark C. Carnes. It's really good about why people back in the day wanted to join into a secret society, specifically the Freemasons.
Well, probably societal. To a certain extent.
At its time, yeah, it was a thing to do. So the rites in mythology is a very effective tool, and it was for hundreds and hundreds of years. Notable secret societies. The first one we got to talk about is the one that everybody knows. It's the Freemasons. Now, the Freemasons, if you can think back in the day, there were certain guilds for certain trades that you had. You had blacksmiths, you had carpenters guilds,
and of course the lollipop.
And yes, you have the lollipop. You had the Lollipop Guild. Can't forget about them. That's a sweet guild, that one. The idea of the people that would build the cathedrals, or the buildings, or the churches at the time, they would have tents outside where they would be building. They would probably the only people that they'd be talking to were each other. Before they actually even formed a club, they would meet in pubs in and around England specifically, but other places in Europe, and they would draw on the floors different icons. The iconography of the Freemasons is actually really cool. It's worth almost an episode in and of itself. They also allowed people that were not Masons to be part of the club. These were called accepted Masons. Okay. So you didn't have to work as a stonemason to be considered a Mason.
I see. Mason by exception.
Eventually from there, they found the idea that if you're a Mason, it doesn't matter if you're rich, it doesn't matter if you're poor, as long as you believed in the great architect or the great builder, you were equal to the people around you.
Right.
Even though there were hierarchical structures within Freemasonry, it was kind of like a leveling, which was a very attractive idea.
Very unionized, if you will.
Exactly. Yeah, very, very much so. The correlations between men's clubs and unions is...
It's not really a correlation, it's almost symbiotic.
Yeah, I would say so. Freemasonry, it spread far and wide. Again, most of the people that signed the Constitution of the United States of America, even within Canada itself, it was enormous. The one thing that Freemasons have is that the mythology of Freemasonry is very convoluted. In 1717, the Grand Lodge was formed in London, England. Before then, you had people that were calling themselves Masons and whatnot. They would trace their roots back to the building of Solomon's Temple.
Interesting.
The architect of Solomon's Temple was named Hiram Abiff. He was murdered by what are called the three ruffians, which are Jubelo, Jubalam, and Jubela. That is the widow's son, if you're...
I do recall from old Bible study.
But what's cool about their mythology is that if you go to Winnipeg, Manitoba, their Parliament building is built by Masons. A lot of them moved there to do the Selkirk settlement. A lot of them were Scottish. And that it's set up to look like Solomon's Temple, or what the architects of the legislature thought that...
They would look like.
Yes. Sorry, did I say Parliament? It should have been legislature building. A lot of the Freemasons say that they were after Jacques de Molay, who was the last of the Templars to be burnt at the stake on Friday the 13th, sometime in I believe it was the 14th century, that they moved to Scotland, and that's where Scottish Freemasonry comes. Their mythology is just very, very vast, and it's somewhat interesting.
They really string that thread all through history.
Yes, of course, because they're secret and because they were seemingly nearly all across the world in a very, it took them time, but in a very short period of time, they were nearly all pervasive, especially here in North America. A lot of conspiracy theories get attached to them. Rightly so, but not rightly so. But if you're keeping something secret, people are interested,
of course. And if you stay secret, their rituals, we know about them now, but back in the day, they were quite secret. A little funny story I have: I'm not a Freemason. But I was having an issue. Something happened where an authority figure was not allowing me to do something. Of course.
That I wanted to do.
Well, standard authority figure
and
stuff.
We were getting nowhere in our communication, and he was basically withholding me. And I noticed that he had a ring on, and it was a ring of the square and the compass.
Okay.
And I made a remark about it, and he asked me if I was a Mason, and I lied. Oh. And I said I was. I said it was part of Acacia Lounge 114 in
But you
Edmonton,
being such
Alberta.
an intrepid
being the bagman.
Of course, there we go. Being the bagman, you know the ins and outs of just about any situation.
And guess what? He went away and he allowed me to do the thing.
And what do you know?
So they do take care of each other.
When you're each other, when you're in there.
or people that know a lot about their mythology.
That counts.
That counts.
We'll call that a win.
Freemasonry specifically, they get their own episode. I can only go in so much, but they get their own episode. Another order is the ancient mystical order Rosicrucis, which is a Rosicrucian order. Rosicrucianism, basically high ideals for mankind, kind of a liberation of the world through the individual. Mm-hmm. And I don't know too much about Amorc.
They're not technically connected to humanism, are they?
They are big into humanism.
Okay,
Yeah,
gotcha.
very much so. Yes. I would say that even the Freemasons are as well, in a strange, small way.
Right.
Freemasons are also one of the largest charitable organizations on Earth. The Shriners themselves, which are an offshoot of Freemasonry, they set up, I think...
The guys with the hats.
The guys with the hats and the cars in the parade.
Question, maybe offshoot. The guys with the hats and the cars... Mm-hmm. It looks incredibly connected to the hat that gentlemen wore during the Ottoman Empire.
They're called fezzes.
If you will.
The Shriners, they just added a bit of Arabic mysticism to the mix. But they are an offshoot of Masonry. And they've set up, I think they were instrumental in setting up most of the burn hospitals for children in and around North America.
No kidding.
Yeah.
No shit.
Yeah.
The more you know.
Yeah. But the things with the Freemasons and Amorc is that they're not really that secret. You can find them in the phone book. Do people even use phone books? Anyways, you can find them.
Google.
You can find them on Google Maps. You can find books about their rituals and everything that they do, all of their symbols and whatnot. So, yeah, they're not really that secret. And here's the other thing. Like, I haven't attended a ceremony, but I've been shown inside several Masonic temples. They've shown me, like, lots of their artifacts. Yeah, no, it's... We can only talk about these guys before the C word comes back into the conversation, and that's conspiracy, of course. So evidence of secret societies having an out-and-out world domination plot is nearly non-existent, let alone machinations for an outright conspiracy in their tenets. However, members and groups in secret societies certainly involve themselves in conspiracies. So let's give you a Freemasonic conspiracy.
Oh,
Ready?
Free. For those at home with their bingo dabbers, this is your first conspiracy dabber.
And this is going to be a somewhat local example, at least in a small part. It's late 18th century, early 19th century, and it involves the case of William Morgan. So though this story mostly takes place in western New York State, for a time, William Morgan worked on a farm on Yonge Street. At the time, Toronto was called York.
Of course.
And then he later on worked on a brewery located on Bay and Adelaide. The brewery burnt down, and he went back to New York. In fact, there's even a William Morgan Drive here in Toronto. I don't know if it's the same. William Morgan is a somewhat innocuous name, but I'd be interested to find out if it's...
I suspect it might be somewhat connected.
I think it might be. Yeah, I think so.
You know, with the Masons and whatnot.
So most of the story takes place in Batavia, New York. So here's what you need to know about William Morgan. He was a liar and just a general pest with ambitions of being known for something. He had this kind of Ozymandian need to be known to time and
Let me do something.
Just anything,
make a mark.
Anything. Yeah, he wanted to make his mark. In all the literature, I've read 3 books. I can only remember 2. I've read Morgan, The Scandal That Shook Freemasonry, and a book called The Bright Mason, which is actually very, very good. In all the literature I've read about William Morgan, nobody has anything redeeming to say about this guy. Not a single.
Not a damn thing to say. Not a damn good thing to say about this guy.
Single good. He was just one of those people. He claimed that he was made a Mason in Canada. In Batavia, in New York, there's a statue of him now to this day. Every lodge that he wanted to get into and join in on their ceremonies, they rejected his ass. They just said no because he was a piece of shit, basically. So, feeling spurned, Morgan announced in a newspaper that he would be publishing a book revealing all the rites and the rituals of the Freemasons. It was going to be a tell-all book, and he got a chunk of money to produce this book. To counter this, Freemasons and Freemason organizations in Batavia and in New York in general, New York State, that is, they put out newspapers basically saying that he's never been a Mason, he doesn't know what he's talking about, he's also a piece of shit. William was arrested for something very menial, which kind of sees that there might be some kind of a Masonic influence there. He was
black.
No, he was arrested for something really, really stupid, and it was non-payment on a shirt and a tie. And back in the day, you actually could go to prison for non-payment. It was a big thing. If you had an IOU, they could throw you in jail for an IOU.
No layaways here, sir.
So the publisher that had paid him money, they paid his debt, and Morgan was released. But very shortly after he was released, he was arrested again for not paying his bar tab. He was an alcoholic.
Okay.
And he didn't pay his bar tab.
So again,
another Masonic thing. What's going on here? And they seem to certainly be descending on him. Then a group of men appeared at the jail that he was imprisoned in. And from what was seen on the street, they saw these men hurrying him into a carriage. And that was the last that anybody saw of William Morgan.
He got kidnapped.
He was gone. Completely gone. Some eyewitnesses that witnessed this said that he shouted, "Murder."
Oh, Billy Morgan foretold his own death.
It's poor Billy Morgan. So what happened? Was he killed? Was he given money to disappear? Unfortunately, we will never know. But a body washed up on the shores of Lake Ontario. This was declared to be William Morgan. This body was buried as William Morgan. But the wife of a Canadian man, she said the description of the body, which was pretty decomposed and pretty bad, let alone waterlogged. She said that the clothes matched her husband's. William Morgan was bald. This corpse had hair. Anyway, so the body that was buried there was probably not William.
I mean, the poor sap who ended up getting buried as William Morgan.
I know, right? That sucks.
It's I was a decent guy. I don't want to be buried under this piece of shit.
I don't want to be buried as the asshole.
I am not him.
My bones are not resting easily, sir.
He's probably haunting a place right now.
I wouldn't doubt it. Well, he certainly haunted Freemasonry for a while, because the aftermath was several men, Masons, they were given extremely lenient sentences for holding somebody under their duress. They weren't put in jail for murder or anything. They got really, really lenient sentences. I think the longest sentence was 28 months, right? There was again thoughts that the jury was made up of Freemasons. There was a lot of them about at the time.
Stacking the deck. So
name as many U.S. political parties as you can, Gabe.
Oh, the Democrats, the Republicans. I'm sure there's the Libertarians, the Tea Party. Do they count as a party? No. Okay, we'll have that debate later. I don't know.
Well, for a time there was what's called the Anti-Mason Party.
Anti-Mason Party.
The Anti-Mason Party.
Huh.
Completely due to the William Morgan scandal, a third political party was found in the United States called the Anti-Mason Party.
Anti-Mason.
And they actually did quite well. They won. I think they won a state. I think they won Virginia. Again, I might get my hand slapped. Of course, they came in third. Eventually, but they were very popular, and Anti-Mason sentiment was at an all-time high. Eventually, the Anti-Mason Party joined the Whig Party, which is another party that also went the way of the dodo. But the biggest thing was that numbers of Masons in America, it just plummeted. They had dirty hands, and they were controlling every machination within government and every process. Freemasonry in America suffered after being such a huge thing. Numbers went down, and they didn't go back up again until after the Civil War. What's strange about Masonry, especially within the United States, is that it seems to get very popular after a very tumultuous time. The American Revolution, numbers spiked.
Right.
William Morgan brings them down. Civil War, numbers spike. World War I, spike.
Right.
World War II, spike. And the Masons really haven't been as popular since the end of the Second World War.
Interesting.
Certainly after the 60s and the whole, fuck you, square. Because that's what the kids said. I saw a movie once where somebody
Forrest
said
Gump.
breadhead man.
If I may wager,
Yeah.
it seems like this was the lashing out of an age group of gentlemen, if you will, of a certain demographic.
Yes.
And I think maybe we see that I don't think the politics are the same, but I think you see that in a little bit of the alt-right. Mm-hmm. You see people coming back from certain situations or after tumultuous times, and they need an outlet of people who understand their background and their feelings about certain things. And sometimes people just give you answers of which maybe you need, and that's how you build membership in an organization. I don't think Masons were in that sense.
No.
But it sounds like that might be maybe some of the the pull factor, if you will, of people coming back from certain tumultuous situations.
Yeah, I would agree. And when things seem chaotic, there's nothing more that you want to involve yourself in than some kind of a community, some
organization,
some kind of an organization. So that is the poor case.
Did they ever still do Mason stuff? Did Masons get squeezed out? Like, are we asking the actual Masons and the Freemasons how they feel about the appropriation of Mason culture?
Well, I think that any kind of press at this point is good press for the Freemasons.
Yeah, I can imagine.
I've heard recently that it's not that their numbers are they're growing vastly. It's just I think the shrinking is less.
They're more stagnant than they were before.
Yeah,
interesting.
In 1818, at a rock quarry somewhere outside of Batavia, there was a pile of bones, some older clothing, and a tobacco box found with the initials WM on them.
Dun, dun, dun.
But nothing could be conclusive. And that's the sad case of William Morgan.
What do you think?
What do I think? Oh, he was definitely killed.
Okay.
Yeah, he was definitely.
No, I think we can all agree on that.
Yeah.
But do you think he ended up in Ontario? Do you think he he got killed later on in life, or do you think that was him in the rock quarry?
He was aced right then and there after the jail. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. No, they just they weren't happy with him. They got rid of him.
Causing too much ruckus.
Too much ruckus. You can't do that. Not against the Freemasons.
Well, not in an organization.
Not back then. How's your English history, Gabe?
Garbage at best.
Is it? Okay. Are you aware of the Jacobites?
Oh, I do. Hey, what do you know?
All right. So,
step in the right direction.
This is an actual conspiracy within Masonic ranks, and one which wished to overthrow an actual monarchy. So here is where the Masonic conspiracy is kind of birthed. So, for those that don't know, royalty in England follows houses. Mm-hmm. So after Elizabeth I, which was the Tudor house, you had the House of Stuart.
Gotcha.
What religion the monarchs favored was very important at the time. And the Protestant Reformation was terrifying to many powerful Catholics and even just regular Catholics within England.
Right.
After the English Civil War, beheading of Charles I, James II, who was in exile in France during the Civil War, he converted to Catholicism while he was in France. He also saw a little something that was happening there, the rule of what would be the Sun King Louis XIV, and he liked what he saw. And when he came back to England to become the monarch, oh, goodness gracious. Gabe is handing me a picture of Louis XIV there. Not bad. Not bad. Why?
Side story, I went to a high school in Scarborough. For those listeners who went to Scarborough, went to Cardinal Newman. There was a history teacher who taught AP history. And it was really European history. But once you graduated, once you got through that pretty tough course, maybe one of the best courses I've ever taken, you get a picture of Louis XIV. He was just a big fan of Louis XIV.
Hey, why not?
Of course.
Well,
the Sun King.
The Sun King.
Really, it was because he always took pictures. Interesting fact. Well, he always got portraits painted of him with his foot up, exposing his calf a little bit. And they said that maybe he just had great calves.
I have a friend in high school that said that all the statues of Louis XIV in and around France, the horses have enormous genitalia.
Well, you know what? It's
good to be the king.
Sometimes you got to call a spade a spade.
You got to
let him know.
Exactly.
You can't let him know, but you got to let him know.
You got to let him know.
But yeah, he every time he for every graduate class of that teacher particularly taught for 30-something years. Everybody got a picture of Louis XIV.
That's cool.
So every so often you'll run into somebody who I may know, or you find out that they went to that same high school, and you're like, did you take so-and-so's history class? Oh, and then you pull out a picture of Louis XIV.
There you go. Secret society?
Oh, that would technically qualify for such
as
things.
A secret society, yeah.
Wow,
oh,
who knew?
The birthing of a secret society, as you hear
it's already in.
For you right now. James II, huge fan of Louis XIV. He wanted to get rid of the parliamentary system that was in England at the time. So tensions grew, and eventually James's sister, Mary, her husband, William of Orange, raised an army and set sail for England with his Protestantism in tow. Right. Most of the troops that James sent to clash and crush Bill's forces either switched sides or they just didn't fight. And James fled to Ireland, where his remaining forces were crushed at the Battle of the Boyne in 1690. This was known as the Glorious Revolution.
Of course.
So many in England remained loyal to the House of Stuart. What took over from them was the House of Hanover, and these people that remained loyal to James became the Jacobites. Jacob is the Latin translation of James, and huge numbers of influential Jacobites were Masons, and they used their Masonic connections to recruit allies and further their cause. And what was their cause? A return to a Catholic monarch.
Interesting.
Yes. So Freemasonry kind of became a battleground, and using secret societies for political subversion kicked into overdrive, and this spread pretty much all throughout Europe. There was a failed uprising by James II's son, James III, in 1715, with influential Masons' loyalty to the House of Stuart. They thought the people of England would support them, and they were incredibly wrong. James III had to flee back to France.
Right.
And in response, the ruling House of England, the Hanovers, they found support amongst Freemasons. They started their own lodges. So you had Jacobite and Hanover Mason lodges, and they would clash with each other. And it was a very strange period of time. In 1745, all of this came to a head. So there was 30 years between 1715 and 1745. Jacobite Masons conspiring, gathering resources, sowing dissension, establishing foreign allies, and stockpiling weapons. And enter Bonnie Prince Charlie, or Charlie Stuart. He set sail to England from Brittany. A whole lot of sailing going on with this whole situation. Yeah. They like their seas. Like before, this absolutely failed. They were pushed back to Scotland, and Bonnie Prince Charlie, I believe he also fled to France, and he became an alcoholic. It's like they didn't learn the first time.
Well, you know what? Fool me once.
Fool me once. If you don't succeed, try again. The Jacobites, secret societies, specifically the Masonic Jacobites, they were pressed to help those who carried the Jacobite cause to basically flee abroad. They were no good, and they were targeted. The Jacobites within Masonry, they also moved on. But the methods used in the struggle between the Jacobites and the Hanovers found new uses. It showed others elsewhere that this kind of thing can actually have a small impact, specifically in America and France.
Oh, okay.
So,
if I may.
Yes.
So my curiosity at this point would be, as the Hanovers and the Jacobites are, duking it out, and they're looking to sow their seeds of dissension somewhere else, what is the general public's? Are they just none the wiser? They're just like, oh, there go the Jacobites and the Hanovers duking it out again, or is it just more like, oh, so and so goes to the club, the lodge every so often, or he goes to go see the guys, and then lo and behold, you find out later on, there was more. There was more
to it. Yeah, I think that would definitely. people weren't stupid back in the day.
Of course.
Yeah, so I think there was a bit more of like, what are you doing at the club? Mm-hmm. Interesting, but again, you didn't know if it was a Hanover or you didn't know if it was a Jacobite.
Oh, you just knew there was
was something happening, right? Unless they were out and out, like I'm a Catholic.
Yeah,
then you would kind of like, I'm pretty sure they support the Stuarts. I'm pretty sure they're Stuart. Anyways, this form of raising arms and munitions and foreign allies,
right?
Secret societies can be very effective at this. But in England, exhausted factions in Freemasonry, they kind of withered, and they fell back to like the lore and being more of a social club for men.
Of course,
pretty much. They played the politic game, they played the militia game, and it fell apart. And let's be a social club.
Let's just hang out.
Let's all be friends.
Let's just hang out.
So yeah, they kind of stayed with that, or
did they?
Did they?
X-File theme song.
No talk of the secret societies is complete without talking about the Illuminati.
Dun, dun, dun.
So, They were founded in 1776 by Bavarian Adam Weishaupt. It was a college club, and it had very, let's just call it at the time, very liberal ideals. They had a lot of interesting initiation rituals, and it was their aim to try and attract wealthy and prominent individuals within Bavaria and within Germany. They wanted the Illuminati to place themselves in key positions to topple the old order and the church and to bring about a utopia. This was like their aim. This is what they wanted to do. So we know for a fact that some of them did infiltrate Freemason lodges, and also they got their hands, or so they kind of shook hands with a lot of political radicals in France and elsewhere in Europe. The Illuminati did. But as it happens, loose lips sink ships. Institutions began to take notice, and laws passed in 1784 and 85. They banned the order after several police raids and confiscating a lot of their documents, all that fun stuff. Adam Weishaupt, he fled. Others within the Illuminati, they were less lucky and found themselves in prison for a very long period of time. And that's it, guys. That's the story of the Illuminati. That is it.
So they're not hiring rappers to propagate their stories?
Sorry, bud. They were never to be heard from ever again. Wink. But after the French Revolution and some historical digging, conspiracy theorists, they found a group called the Alumbrados, which was a 15th, 16th century, they were kind of taught like a Catholic Zen Buddhism.
Okay.
A lot of them were heterodox, but some of them would be considered like downright heretical, but they were mainly peaceful. They didn't want to topple any governments or anything like this. They just wanted to do their thing, man. And in Spain,
just want to hang out,
and there was this thing in Spain called the Inquisition. Didn't look lightly on these.
Can't go up against that guy.
And they did what Inquisition do, and they put an end to that. But what's interesting is that their adherents of the Alumbrados, they were called the Illuminated Ones, or also translated as the Illuminati. Mm-hmm. And so conspiracy theorists, they say, well, look,
the thread.
It was before Adam Weishaupt. There were also the Illuminati. This idea persists to this day. The book, The Illuminati Trilogy by Robert Anton Wilson and Robert Shea that I talked about in both the Discordian episode and the Robert Anton Wilson episode, I think the resurgence of the Illuminati comes from these guys, which is unfortunate because the people that spout Illuminati bullshit don't realize that the resurgence was a complete joke. It was a farce. Okay. So that's all I have to say about the Illuminati.
Or do you? No?
Or no, that's all I got. So let's get a bit more modern here. And dare I say it, nefarious. Let's get to a story worthy of the word conspiracy. Let's talk about Propaganda Due. They're also known as P2. Now, I'm only going to give the Coles notes, but I can do a whole episode on P2, maybe sometime in the future, in the distant future. But all I can say is Propaganda Due was fucked up. So they are the definition of a shadow organization in the government. They were founded in 1877 by Masonic Grand Lodge of Italy. Membership was primarily amongst members of the Italian Parliament that wanted to become Masons without the Catholic Church knowing this. The Vatican, they banned Masonry, and the Italians, they don't look highly on secret societies. In fact, they're banned in Italy. Probably a lot to do with P2. So
and also the mafia.
So what was their game? Well, mostly money laundering. They also used this money laundering. They received CIA funds to fight communism around the world, but especially in South America. They had their hands in the Falklands War.
Oh, shit.
Prominent member Licio Gelli played the CIA and the KGB off of each other while basically pocketing cash. Members also helped broker a deal between the mafia and the Vatican, and they took a cut of this. They also probably killed a Pope John Paul I.
Huh?
And there was a huge bank at the time, and this would have been in the late 70s, early 80s, called Banco Ambrosiano, based out of Milan. The Vatican was its major shareholder. The chairman of this bank, Banco Ambrosiano, his name was Roberto Calvi. He was known as God's banker.
Roberto Calvi?
Calvi,
Oh, shoot.
He was known as God's banker. P2 member Michel Sindona. He was also nicknamed the Shark. He was investigated, a lot of attention to Propaganda Due. Michel, he murdered a journalist. He had a journalist killed. In prison in 1986, he drank a cup of coffee that was poisoned with cyanide. Again, a lot of connections to the mafia.
They were still using cyanide in the 70s?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, very much so. The chairman of Banco Ambrosiano, Roberto Calvi, as the bank was falling apart, his secretary jumped out of a building window, apparently, to her death, left a suicide note, as they all do.
And somebody else's penmanship?
Yeah, probably. Very much so. Calvi, he fled Italy under a false passport. It was really strange how he was able to get out of prison. Lots of questions raised. He was found in 1982 hanging from Blackfriars Bridge in London, bricks stuffed in his pockets. And what is the main thing that Masons work with? Bricks.
Well, I'll be damned.
Yeah.
Well, they make no quid pro quo about how they...
No. P2 is absolutely insane. I am leaving out so much of this story. If it interests you, please go down that rabbit hole. It's very compelling stuff. Truth is certainly stranger than fiction, because usually fiction has to make some kind of sense, at least. And P2 makes
none.
It's just
Jesus fucking
people
Christ.
killing people, and it's money changing hands. The Vatican is such a dirty organization. They have been for a long time.
My question would be, what's the line between them being a criminal organization and a secret society? I feel like they're one and the same at this point in time.
Yeah, at this point, they very much were. The amount of money that piled into P2 that they would use for other purposes is just nuts. Like,
that's so
millions. And
I hate it, but also so
millions
fucking cool.
Berlusconi was a member of P2 as well.
Well, duh.
Yeah, exactly.
Having those little sex parties and whatnot and so forth.
There you go. So P2, look it up. I'll put some links to them in the show notes. But let's get some really far out here. And this is going to be my favorite secret society. They are called the Collins Elite. Now, they are a society that the American government says does not exist. It has never existed. But they think that there are beings, call them demons. They could be from another dimension. But think of hell demons. And there was a ritual done that opened up a portal from the other side and let these demons in, and that UFOs and extraterrestrials are just a smokescreen for them. They are apparently they're a highly classified group within the U.S. government. In 1991, Ray Boucher was contacted by two scientists who were working for the Pentagon. They said that these demons are real. They're able to stop people's hearts. They are working on weapons that they can utilize. This kind of technology. They showed Ray Boucher pictures of people with blood coming out of their eyes and definitely dead. Anyways, according to Ray, many involved in the government dealings with the Collins Elite, they're killed, or they become extremely ill and have to stop working for them. They disappear, or they just, they get lost in the muddle. Every time the Collins Elite think that they have one over on the demons, it turns out that they were just being played with like a cat with a string. They are apparently at the forefront of a war between humans and perhaps the Antichrist, and that Armageddon is looming, and a lot of high-ranking members within the American government are a part of them. If this kind of stuff is interesting to you, there's a book called Final Events by Nick Redfern that goes into all of it. It's very crazy stuff. So, as this is a magic and occult podcast, we have to talk about occult secret societies, and we have to start with the big one. There's going to be an episode on these guys all unto itself. They are called the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn, found in either 1887 or 1888. They have such a proclivity.
These societies have such a proclivity for great names.
Yeah. Now, the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn is like the grand poobah. As I've mentioned in previous podcasts, pretty much everything that is considered modern magic can be traced to these guys. So they had very famous members: Bram Stoker, who wrote Dracula, Arthur Conan Doyle, Algernon Blackwood, Arthur Machen, Florence Farr, William Butler.
Farr too?
Yeah.
No shit.
William Butler Yeats, Pamela Coleman Smith, who designed the tarot cards that most people see.
Standard issue.
Aleister Crowley was a member, of course. He's probably the most pertinent members. Anyways, their mythology is that there were these ciphers found by MacGregor Mathers. They deciphered them. That's where they got all of their, the tarot, the Enochian from John Dee, the Hermetic Kabbalah, more astrology, astral projection, all of this kind of good stuff that was written by a group called the Secret Chiefs. And the ciphers came from somebody named Fräulein Sprengel, who probably never existed. Anyways, what can be said about this is it's a hierarchical organization with a lot of, Masonic roots that run very, very deep. They cast a huge shadow over modern occultism. They get their own episode, but what needs to be known is that they're kind of like, as far as occult secret societies, they are definitely the one that most people know, and definitely the biggest one. Aleister Crowley, again, a member. He was also a member of a group called the OTO, or the Ordo Templi Orientis. It's difficult to place an origin on these guys. They were founded by Karl Gellner and Theodor Reuss in Germany. They were Masons themselves. A lot of Masons, as you can see, they kind of drift off and kind of start their own clubs. Like, this club's not doing the most for me, I'm going to start my own club.
Like training wheels.
Yeah, they had 9 degrees. At one point, Theodor Reuss went to Aleister Crowley and he said, how do you know our secrets? And Crowley goes like, what do you mean? He says, like, sex magic. What do you know about sex magic?
That old sex magic.
That old sex magic. And he's like, I came up with this. And he said, well, this is like the secret of our 9th degree, our highest degree. They're the ones that know sex magic. So in a decision that he would regret very quickly, he made Aleister Crowley the head of the OTO in England. And almost immediately, Crowley throws in his own idiosyncrasies into this order. They start following the Book of the Law, which is a book that he channeled from his holy guardian angel in Cairo in 1904. He basically remakes the order how he sees fit. And the English group wasn't that successful. What was very successful were the groups that were in North America. Agape Lodge number 1 was founded in, of all places, Vancouver, British Columbia, by a gentleman named Charles Stanfield Jones, otherwise known as Frater Akkad, who was later found roaming the streets naked and rambling about. Anyways.
That'll happen to the best of us.
Yes, well, it's a normal Thursday around these parts, let me tell you. The biggest group, though, is Agape Lodge number 2, based out of California. Such members, probably the biggest one was Jack Parsons. Jack Parsons has a crater on the dark side of the moon. He was one of the founders of the Jet Propulsion Laboratory. To put it bluntly, we would not have landed on the moon if it wasn't for Jack Parsons. But what he did is that apparently he did some rituals that brought into the world evil demons. It was the Babylon working. And, he was best buds with some guy named L. Ron Hubbard for a period of time.
Oh.
Anyways, the OTO...
And all this is happening at the Love Lodge number 2, eh?
Yeah. These two orders, the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn and the OTO, they kind of have offshoot orders to this day that kind of toe their line. The OTO, and what is the OTO order that is the most prominent that exists right now, is there's like 15 different orders, and they all fight and bicker with each other, and they have for a long, long period of time, basically since Aleister Crowley died. It's really, really messy, but that's how it goes. Then there's the builders of the Antium, and the Antium is a section of a Greek temple. Anyways, it was founded by Paul Foster Case, also a member of the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn. They have a temple in LA. I've been there. It's very cool. It looks like an Egyptian temple. Very interesting. They kind of toe the Western magical tradition. They use meditation, tarot, and astrology. They're less big on the whole John Dee and the Enochian. Paul Foster Case thought that Enochian magic was like black magic and terrible. Anyways, most of these orders, though, and even to this day, if it's a secret order that is occult-based, they're usually going to get most of their stuff from the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn, and it's going to be a lot of Kabbalah, Jewish mysticism, seen through a Hermetic lens, and all that jazz.
If I may.
Yeah.
So my curiosity would be, why there seems to be some sort of consistency with borrowing from like a stack of maybe 4 to 5 different types of mythologies and types of mysticism, a little bit of Hebrew, a little bit of Egyptian, a little bit of some sort of Arabic kerfuffle. But why are we only, every so often you'll borrow from Far Eastern, Chinese type of mythology. Right. But it seems like they're only picking from a handful that is maybe, I would wager to say, well documented, as opposed to maybe looking for other types.
Yeah, they were really good at taking from what they perceived at the time to be the real magic. I've mentioned in previous podcast, that I think the impetus and the ambition that the earlier founders and earlier members of the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn, it's a good impulse to want to run. They would just run to the British Museum, find old magical papyri, find interesting documents written by John Dee, older grimoires or books of magic. Like this is like healthy impulse, but then they just kind of taped it all together and tried to make it. And what's interesting about it is that it is sexy. Tarot cards are sexy. Astrology is sexy.
Right.
Thinking that it's all Egypt and that Egypt had the secret. And that there's this underlying order that has been through all of history, and we are just part of that lineage.
We're all tied together in this big crazy.
And unfortunately, it's not a straight line. I keep saying this. It's not a straight line.
Is it maybe, if I may wager, all those things that they're borrowing from is all maybe mildly connected to Christianity?
Very much so.
And that's what their kind of maybe foundational understanding of these types of religious...
Say what you will, but the Freemasons, although they say that anybody can be a Freemason, you can be a Jew and join Freemasons...
Anybody, even a Jew. That seems so hilarious.
Yeah, no, but
that's usually
it is a very Christian organization.
Could black people join the Freemasons? For full disclosure, I feel like maybe people may not know I'm black, but I am.
Prince Hall Masonry, which is enormously influential in community and the furthering of the black rights, the civil rights.
No kidding.
Yeah, Prince Hall. Jesse Jackson's a member. Al Green's a member. Yeah, if you're interested.
Shit.
Prince Hall Masonry is.
I hate to feel like more. This seems very self-serving, but I feel like I'm like, oh, now I'm in. Okay, maybe the Masons didn't have terrible thoughts.
I wish.
This seems rather.
Yeah, Prince Hall was an abolitionist and very interesting character. I wish I knew way more about Prince Hall Masonry. Perhaps I'll have you back on another episode, because that
is rather interesting, because usually when you hear about these types of secret societies, usually they're rather exclusive and
very white.
Exclusive
magic. I'm just going to say this is a very male white thing usually.
Yeah, I mean it's like comedy. I know it all too well.
Sorry.
Yeah,
but no, okay. Prince Hall Masonry is a very fascinating. It's a very interesting Wikipedia page. But yeah,
Prince Hall Masonry. Yeah. Interesting. Okay. Yeah. Maybe a link in the
absolutely, for sure. Yeah, the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn, it seems very sexy. Mm-hmm. It seems, and there's an order to it, and there's a system, and people like order, people like systems.
And if they're drawing from a certain crowd, they know how to kind of loop everybody in.
Yeah, but as I said, these days, a lot of orders say that they are of the lineage of these groups, the OTO and the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn, and it's maybe they are, but it's probably not. So.
Right.
But yeah, all of these groups, they double down on the rites and the initiations and the things that were mainly used as a cover or a mythology for other secret societies. And for them, it is about enlightenment and whatnot. There's a question, though, that should I join a secret society, especially for people interested in magic? And I say, yeah. If you want to, sure. If you want to join the Freemasons, I say go for it. From most Freemasons that I've talked to, they're like, truth be told, it's a get-together once a month. We eat great food, and we drink our faces off. It's a grand time. So
that's all that is.
And they are, again, they're very active in their communities, especially Freemasons.
I've seen them in many a parade.
Yeah, exactly. But here's the thing: if you want to get to the nuts and bolts and the more practical side of magic, you have to understand this: magical proficiency and its secrets used to be passed down from master to student. Like it was that kind of thing. And all of these tools and techniques are kind of readily available now. Mm-hmm. They really are. You can find all of these texts online. Even Masonry, again, you can find out all of their mythology and their history and their symbols and what they do. It's just a Google away. And specifically with the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn, one of the members of, I don't believe it was the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn, I think it was the Stella Matutina, Israel Regardie, he basically published all of the rites and the rituals and the manuals of the Golden Dawn in 1938, 1940, and it was a huge thing. It's like, how dare you? Huh. How dare you? All of our secrets, and now you're making money. And it was a big thing.
How scandalous!
Magical, it was a scandal in the magical community. So, if you value feedback or enjoy the idea of a community, then joining an order, it might be in your interest. But speaking as I'm sitting here now, I've mentioned this in a previous episode, I think that the real magic is done in the circle, not by the square. By the squares, in Masonry, everything's done by the square as rules. Yeah. And goetic magic is usually done within a circle. Yes, exactly. So if you feel like you need a community, if you like feedback, again, an order might be, it might be advantageous for you. So what about now? Well, let's talk about now. Specifically, now. Secret societies and Masons numbers, they've always been they've been falling. And the question can be asked, are there any secret societies around anymore? And I'd say no, but there are certainly segments of society with secrets. So here we go. They used very loosely, got rid of the society element and doubled down on the secrets. The need to conceal their actions and their allegiances, that was kept. We are beyond conspiracy theory. The conspiracy theory was a term created by the CIA in 1967 to basically discredit things that are considered conspiracy theories.
Hold on, pause. Yeah. Wait. The CIA made up the term conspiracy theory?
Correct.
Get the fuck out of here. Maybe that might be the bombshell of this whole episode.
Yeah.
They may be the greatest secret society of all is the CIA.
Oh, buddy. So when I was younger, I liked the idea, everybody does when they're 14. I like the idea of secret societies running the world. Conspiracies, everything was running the world. As I got older, I started to think that there was no conspiracy. There's no old order with one plan to take everything over. The world seemed rudderless. But the closer I looked, this directionless seems to be something that they wanted, that this worked in their favor. And that's what's very frightening about what's happening right now. So who are they? When I use the term they, Sir Thomas More said it best. He said, "Everywhere do I perceive a certain conspiracy of rich men seeking their own advantage under that name and pretext of commonwealth." I want to get this out of everybody's heads. There is not a group that meets, but a group that has a single idea and one ambition, and that is money. Power means very little to this group. They created the structure of power, and it's money that they want. There's a small group, and it's spread all across the world. And there was a journalist by the name of Danny Casolaro, and
His name sounds familiar.
A lot of conspiracies form around this guy. He was investigating what was called PROMIS and INSLAW, and he found that the CIA were involved, drug trafficking and gun running and all of these things. In 1991, before he talked to people, and he said, I've got the next step to find out about what is called the octopus. He called it the octopus, and he says it's a lot of tentacles, but it all comes back to one thing.
Right.
He said, if anything happens to me, know that I'm not suicidal. Nothing's the wrong's going to happen. In 1991, he was found in a hotel room, half a bottle of wine drank. I think there was a couple of cans of beer. He was found in a bathtub with extremely deep gashes in his wrists. He'd killed himself. He completely offed himself. The day before, he was like, I've got the next lead on to find out more about the octopus. This might be a bit controversial. And again, conspiracies is not entirely my wheelhouse. But I do think that Danny Casolaro killed himself because I think he saw how things were going to be. We can consider all of these strands to be the tentacles of the octopus, but the head is actually this idea that the more rich that they can get, the better things are for everybody. Now, it's hugely fucking complex. If you try to investigate it, it gets very, very...
It gets very boggy.
Very boggy. Not a chain of single links, for one broken link could lose us all. Rather, a great disorderly tangle of lines, long and short, weak and strong, vanishing into the mnemonic deep, with only their destination in common. And that destination is making fucking tons of money. And to keep you stupid, or better yet, apathetic and therefore ignorant. Focusing on the minutia of politics, like left, right, really binary distinctions. This works entirely in their favor. And to make you think that you actually have an active role in this kind of thing. That's what they want. The small politics, everything, identity politics, gender politics, it all gets put in there. It's a giant wash, and it's fucked. Secret societies form because its constituents feel that they are weak. They form out of fear. At least they did. The problem now is that most of them, They have nothing to fear. Nothing perceivable as yet. Not from us. Gone is the fear that the powerful was one secret away from being found out, and the hordes of the dispossessed would demand justice, or they demand sacrifice. We have a group of both private and public organizations that carry the most power, wealth, and dare I say responsibility, yet they have, and have always made the rules. They have the least amount of accountability. The one world Illuminati secret society doesn't exist now, and it probably never did. We have something much, much more terrifying. And if you think that I'm only speaking in very, very broad terms with a lot of vaguity and it's somewhat abstract, you're very right. Geopolitics is not my forte. All I have done is recognize the bars, so to speak, and I implore you to do the same.
The bars.
Recognize the bars. Perhaps the greatest investigation of geopolitics as they exist over the last 75 years, in my opinion, was done by a fellow magician. I've mentioned him many times before in this podcast. His name is Gordon White. He did a series of blog posts called Arcanology, which examines how we've gotten into this mess and, more specifically, what we can do now. So I want people to read these blog posts, read them all. I'll have a link in the show notes. Give yourself a day, maybe even 2 days. Get comfy. Make sure that there's sunlight in the room with your reading. But start from the beginning. It is absolutely breathtaking. No quarter is given. It's complex and just unreal. We are in a definite mess, and navigating out of it is going to be a lot of work. But it is necessary reading for illumination. And what can we do now? Well, you're in the right neighborhood. Magic, of course. Being responsible for your consciousness and creating your journey is, I think, very, very important. Understanding their rules and bending, if not breaking them. That fear that I was talking about earlier, this is what scares them the most. A realization amongst the teeming, dissatisfied masses that their material, isolationist view of postmodern world just doesn't cut it anymore. And I think a society that has this secret, well, that's the most powerful thing. And that will be our little secret for society.
Shh. Don't tell nobody.
And that is the episode on secret societies, Gabe.
Douglas, you did not fail to not only impress me, but also I edge of my seat.
Sorry, bud.
No, this is fantastic. You did not fail one little bit.
So, for people that want resources on this kind of stuff, if you live in North America, specifically in America, you have to read an author by the name of Peter Levenda. He's got a series of 3 books. They're called Sinister Forces. They are unreal. They are just great stuff. And if some of you notice, you didn't talk about the Nazis enough. You need to talk about the Nazis and secret societies and the Tula Gesellschaft and the Ariosophy. Just maybe sometime in the future when I need a filler episode. I'm very tired of the Nazis and the occult stuff. But Peter Levenda wrote a book called Unholy Alliance about it. It is the best book on Nazis and the occult. If secret history is something that you're really fascinated in, things like the Templars or Venice banking, even Christopher Columbus, the Vatican, that kind of stuff, look for Joseph P. Farrell.
Yes. Big fan. Yeah.
He wrote The Financial Vipers of Venice. Great book. He also wrote a book called The Thrice Great Hermetica and the Janus Age. Extremely good. Other things you can do, watch Adam Curtis. He's a documentary filmmaker, works for the BBC mostly. It's very compelling. Some of the conclusions are a bit of a stretch, but the tone and the overarching hypotheses that he has in each of his documentary series, they're absolutely bang on. Mm-hmm. For podcasts, I can suggest the Higher Side Chats. They're very good. It's Greg Carlwood's podcast. It's mostly about conspiracies, and the people that he talked to are very intelligent, and they know what they're talking about, and they're very great. Geopolitics, there's lots of people that you can go to. One of my favorites is Catherine Austin Fitz. I believe it's the Solari Report. She's very good. What else do we have here?
That sounds familiar.
If you just want to learn about secret societies in general, probably my favorite book is called The Element Encyclopedia of Secret Societies by John Michael Greer. He's a Freemason, very good. Who I talked about earlier, Nick Redfern. He was the one who wrote a book, Final Events, about the Collins elite.
Yeah, right.
He also has a book called Secret Societies. There's a documentary called Collapse about Michael Ruppert, somewhat alarmist about what's going on now. I believe.
I would presume alarmist for a good reason.
Yeah, I believe it came out. It did come out just over a decade ago, and yeah, it's essential viewing for this day and age. I love the documentary because it's more about the collapse of the person as opposed to the collapse of the society.
Right.
But it's really cool to see, and I just have to put this out here: stay the fuck away from Alex Jones.
Yo, facts. Oh, listen. Listen. Factual statements are being said right now. Alex Jones is terrible people.
Yeah. Stay away from Alex Jones. It's simplistic rubbish. And here's the thing. I've actually given him many chances. Like, I actually have, there's videos that people say, you have to watch this. And unfortunately,
it's people and whatnot. And so
it's just defeatist, alarmist garbage.
Baloney.
Yeah.
Baloney. And not only, if I may, not only is it alarmist and defeatist, it's actually just not in good intention. There's things that can be alarmist and a little bit defeatist, but there's a little bit of good faith in there that you're like, okay, I'm telling you this because it's bad practice. He's just bad news bears.
Yeah, no, he's absolutely terrible. Stay away from Alex Jones. But here's the other thing, guys, and I hope that this goes through every episode, not just secret societies or conspiracies, but magic. Do your own research. It's not difficult. It just takes time, and really get in there. Ask yourself if you're becoming James Shelby Downard, though. He wrote an article, I believe, called King Kill 33 about Masons and the assassination of JFK. All of his conspiracies are really fucking crazy. If the websites you're going to get your information have a black background with green font on it,
listen,
you're probably not getting it from a very
that was good all of my teenage years.
You're
take
not
that
getting
back.
it from a good source. But, ask yourself, am I becoming James Shelby Downard? If your conclusions look like they have been written by him, then give your head a shake, please. Like magic, there's a lot to read, there's a lot to learn. Find out what interests you and head down that path and just, simplify things. But the truth is out there, and it's very complex, and it's very terrifying. There are ways to navigate around it. You're on the right path, but more than anything, of all these resources, please read Arcanology. I believe it's 13 posts by Gordon White. They will be in the show notes, and that will basically bring you up to what's happening now. Better than any other thing that I've read. This is it. And with that, that's the end of the program, everybody. For those that are interested, head to whatmagicisthis.com. There you will find Twitter. You're going to find my Instagram. You're going to find my Facebook. Also on there, there's ways to subscribe to iTunes, to Spotify, to Stitcher, to Google Play. I've got Radio Public, iHeartRadio. I just got on Pandora, although they haven't put me up yet. Oh, YouTube. If they've got podcasts, I'm definitely there.
I must state, as a often listener, a consistent listener. Your Twitter is fantastic.
Thank you.
I think every so often you may.
I'm very new to it, and
but you mentioned
the one-liners I'm not good at yet.
Oh, the one-liners are a hit and miss, and that's anybody. That's even the best of the best. But your ability to connect people by accident, and your ability to this person is a very interesting person that I'm reading right now, and they're very whatever topic that you're on brand with. Yeah. It's very, very good.
Thank you so much.
I must say,
I have show notes on my website for every episode. This one, there's going to be a ridiculous amount of show notes for this one, guys. If you want to go down the rabbit hole for the things that I've talked about, then please go to the show notes on whatmagicisthis.com. And other than that, guys, we're going to end the show with the post-show quid pro quo.
Oh boy!
You ready?
I'm excited.
Now you might have to think about this one.
Okay. But prepared I am.
But, you speak from the heart.
I often do.
So, Gabriel.
Douglas.
Who is your pick for the least known but most important figure of the last 100 years?
Least known? Most important.
Yeah.
Least known, most important. Least known, most important.
Or even maybe not like an obvious choice.
I would. Oh, this is going to be a shoot from the hip, and it's going to be a little guttural. His name escapes me, but it doesn't escape me. His name is Medgar Evers. Medgar Evers was a civil rights leader of the 60s. Right. Medgar Evers was one of the mid 60s. He was killed in front of his home, in front of his children. Actually, really, really, really sad stuff. One of the very, very few people who was. I think oftentimes we distill. That feels very reductionist argument of the black guy's going to talk about civil rights. he was one of the, I think oftentimes when we think of the civil rights movement of the 60s, we think of it was binary. And I think we briefly off mic, we talked about binary and we don't like it.
I don't like binary, no.
But oftentimes we think of the civil rights movement as a little bit of a binary. It's either you're pro or against, and if you were against, if you're pro, it was either Martin or Malcolm.
Right.
Martin Luther King or Jr. or Malcolm X. But there were a few people in between that were rather interesting folks who were doing a lot of groundwork and, again, lobbying for good change. And Medgar Evers was a person who often people do not talk about.
Right.
He was very early on talking about an equity of rights amongst people, period. A lot of times the civil rights movement, we're not talking about women's rights. We were not talking about rights of people who were of different gender identities. Medgar Evers wasn't exactly saying it in those uncertain terms, but people of in all shapes, walks, or forms. Medgar Evers was that great. I would also wager to say James Baldwin as well.
James Baldwin, yeah.
I think a lot of people don't maybe know.
He's getting a bit of a bit more recognition now.
I think I would agree. I think now he's getting a little bit of light, which I didn't. He was my guttural response, so I went for Medgar Evers. I am comfortable with that answer. No, I think my secret answer is also Anthony Bourdain. Anthony Bourdain is
rest in peace.
Rest in peace.
Yeah.
There was a number of people's passings that you hear people's passings often, and sometimes they affect you, and sometimes your people they don't realize, you don't immediately feel their effect, but then the gravity of it kind of shakes you like an aftershock of an earthquake. And his passing really, really affected.
Have you read Medium Raw, his second book?
Yep.
That was the one where and it wasn't like a premonition, but after I read that one, I think I was like, this man's going to kill himself.
Yeah. I met him once.
Did you
met
actually?
him in Boston.
Wow.
Ooh. By accident. It was like a transition of a megabus, really. I was like in a Greyhound station.
Yeah.
And he was going somewhere, he was doing something, whatever. And I was like, wow, this is Anthony Bourdain. I'm like, I would be incredibly upset with myself if I don't go and say hi. And we chatted for maybe 5 minutes, and it was just a pleasant, and he was as pleasant as, I wouldn't even say pleasant, where it was like, oh, nice to meet you. What do you do for a living? Whatever. It was just more like, hey, man, how you doing? And he chatted with me like a guy who's known me for a while, and he just, like if I were to run into you on Yonge Street and you're like, hey, where you going? Oh, yeah, hey, well, okay. Or I'll catch up with you when I catch up with you. And away you go. He was a wonderful person. And I think he's also a person who gave light to a lot of people who don't.
I miss St. Anthony every day. Yeah. No, he
was a great guy. Saint indeed.
Yeah.
But Medgar Evers, 1A and 1B, and neither of the two are A or B.
Okay. Wonderful. As mentioned earlier, you've got a podcast. You want to sound off on that?
I do. I have the Hood Anthropologist, where I engage in.
We're big fans of anthropology here.
It's fantastic, and as anybody should. Do we actually engage in capital A anthropology? I would wager we really don't. But lowercase a anthropology, I think we do well. And I speak with a whole number of people. It's about 7 episodes of season 1. Season 2 will be hopefully hitting the shelves in June, but you can find that on Spotify, The Hood Anthropologist.
There will be a link in the show notes for everybody to head there.
Fantastic.
Gabriel.
Douglas.
Thank you for being a wonderful guest. I gotta have you back on, buddy.
An absolute fucking pleasure.
Yeah, no, I definitely gotta have you back on.
This
has been one of the bigger episodes, but it's also I think we definitely got our hands into the dirt with this.
I think we went down a rabbit hole.
We did the work.
And I'd wager we say we found a rabbit.
Yeah, I would hope so. If only St. Anthony was here to cook it.
Oh.
Gabe, thank you so much.
Thank you, Douglas.
Yeah, but thank you, everybody, for listening. This has been What Magic Is This? My name is Douglas Batchelor, and we'll talk at you soon.
Cheers.
Bye-bye.